All right, so here are some more difficult problems, a little bit more advanced when dealing with operations with complex numbers. So let's take a look at number 11. So I have 5i times negative 2i. So let's deal with just the first two numbers there, 5i times I. So that will be 5i squared. Now, when multiplying, and we have multiplying i's together, of course, just like a variable, when we multiply, the exponents will change. And in this case, whenever I have I, and it's I squared gets replaced with negative 1. Now you're probably like, well, what does that mean? I don't even get that. So remember, the I comes from when a negative is inside the square root sign. And then we just continue the operation as normal. So when I have two i's that are being multiplied together, it essentially is saying that that imaginary figure isn't imaginary because it's being replaced with a positive number that should have been there in the first place. So, anyway, a long way of saying that when I have two imaginaries being multiplied together, it's no longer imaginary. So anyway, I squared will always be replaced by negative 1. So in this problem, that I squared means it will be 5 times negative 1. And 5 times negative 1 is negative 5. Then we continue the rest of the problem. Negative 5 times negative 2i will give me positive 10i. So the important thing to remember here is that I squared will always be replaced by negative 1. On number 12, just keeping with the theme, negative 4 times 5 is negative 20i squared. Again, I squared gets replaced with negative 1, and negative 20 times negative 1 is positive 20. All right, let's look at number 13, a different problem. It's a binomial times a binomial, and remember when I have binomial times a binomial, I use a method that we call FOIL. So first, outside, inside, last. When I distribute the negative 2, I get negative 8 minus 2i. When I distribute the negative I, I get negative 4i minus I squared. And remember, the numbers come before the I. Now, I recognize another I squared in here, but pay very close attention. The I is squared, not negative I is squared. So I squared becomes negative 1, so I have a negative 1, which becomes a positive 1. So now my new problem is going to be negative 8 minus 2i minus 4i plus 1. So when I combine the real numbers, negative 8 and positive 1, I get negative 7. When I combine negative 2 and negative 4, I get negative 6i. And remember, the real numbers come before any imaginary numbers. All right, so 14 is very similar to 13. Let's try number 15. The thing to pay attention to closely is the dot in front. That means multiplication. Usually, we always think, oh, I see parentheses. That means I have to distribute first. Remember, the distributive property is multiplication. So it doesn't always go first because of the parentheses. In the order of operations, parentheses come first, meaning we look inside the parentheses to find out what we're going to do. But there's nothing I can do inside the parentheses. So then the next step in order of operations would be multiplication division, and we always go left to right. So actually I'm going to multiply 7i and 3i together first. So that's going to give me 21i squared. Remember, we replace I squared with negative 1. So 21 times negative 1 is negative 21. Now we'll multiply the rest, negative 8 minus 6i. Distributing the negative 21 in there, negative 21 times negative 8 is positive 168 plus 126i. So the tricky part here is that, remember, with parentheses, in the order of operations, we do what's inside. If I can't do anything inside, then we move on. And in this case, we had to multiply 7i times 3i first. So there you go.